Do you find yourself 1 week into the new year wishing that you had the motivation to go to the gym instead of sitting at home watching The Bachelor? Do you wish that you were born with more self-discipline? Today we'll be talking about the all or nothing principle of self-discipline and how you can implement this into your own life. When it comes to self-discipline, most people view it through the lens of forcing yourself to do something that might seem painful in the short term, but is actually beneficial in the long term, such as studying or going to the gym, or stopping yourself from doing something that might seem pleasurable in the short term, but is actually quite harmful in the long term, such as playing copious amounts of video games, or eating lots of junk food. And this is generally true, as we all know that you don't really need self-discipline to do the things that you actually enjoy. We've all been in these situations, myself included, but over time I've been able to successfully implement this technique and this principle, and it's made an immense difference in my ability to remain disciplined. There are two parts to this principle, both of which are tied to the concept of non-negotiability. The first part relates to the things that you want to get done. This is the all part of the principle. The second relates to the things that you don't want to do. This is the none part of the principle. Another way of thinking about this is in terms of a binary system, with a 0 representing one option, not doing something, or a 1 representing the other option, always doing something, with no in between. Let's take a deeper look into each of these in turn. Most of us watching this video probably have the freedom to do whatever we want at any time throughout the day. Sure, we have a few work-related restrictions or other personal commitments that we have to do at specific times throughout the day, but apart from that, we pretty much have the freedom to do whatever we want. We are very fortunate in this regard, as it means the world is our oyster. Short of financial, geographical, or physical limitations, we can pretty much do whatever we want. But sometimes this isn't always a good thing. In the wise words of Uncle Ben from Spider-Man,
"With great power comes great responsibility."
Having such freedom can actually become a burden, as we have an infinite number of ways to spend our time, which can be overwhelming to think about. One way that we can combat this is by actively trying to remove some freedom and enforce some non-negotiability into our lives. It seems counterintuitive because most of us spend our lives trying to earn enough money to quit our jobs and free up time, a topic that's covered in depth by Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. By making some of these tasks non-negotiable, it removes some of the optionality that we have for how we can spend our time, which empowers us to spend our time on the things that we actually want to be doing. This works well for things that you want to do, but you can't find the motivation to do, like exercise or doing more work. So what does this actually look like in practice? Using myself as an example, one of the things that I'm trying to do to become a quote-unquote successful YouTuber is upload videos on a consistent basis. I know that consistency is the key to success, and so in order to try and remain disciplined, I set myself a goal of releasing 1 video each week. This is a non-negotiable goal, and there are no exceptions. Another example is that a few months ago, I decided that I would try and do exercise every single day, something that I haven't really done in the past. So what I told myself is that you're going to do this every single day, and it doesn't matter what it is that you do. You know, you can go for a 10-minute walk, you can go for a 2-hour bike ride, you can just do a workout at the gym or at home. It doesn't matter what form the exercise takes. As long as you're doing 10 minutes every day, that's all that I expect of myself. I've been doing this habit for long enough now that when it gets to the end of the day and I haven't done any exercise yet, I kind of feel uneasy inside, and I realize that if I don't get up and go outside and do the exercise, then I'm breaking this promise that I made to myself, and so inevitably I usually go and guilt myself into doing some exercise. So that's how we can use the concept of all to get things done that we want to get done. Now let's talk about how we can prevent ourselves from doing things that might be pleasurable in the short term, but painful in the long term. We humans are simple creatures. We are subconsciously programmed to look for the easiest or the most comfortable path, the path of least resistance. And this only becomes more apparent when our active, kind of conscious decision-making part of our mind fatigues with time. This deterioration in decision-making ability with time is referred to as decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is one of the main contributors to bad habits, and the second part of this principle aims at tackling this. The method by which the second part of the principle aims to tackle this is by framing bad habits through a lens of none, or complete abstinence. I find this particular framework useful for stopping yourself from doing habits that you don't want to be doing, like eating lots of junk food, drinking alcohol, stopping smoking. The spectrum of 0 to 100% is quite broad, and there are really only two fixed points, at 0% and at 100%. These are the only kind of definitive time points, and everything in between is variable, and really it's infinitely long. The reason I mention this is because it is a lot easier to do something none of the time or all of the time compared to 10, 20, 50, 80% of the time. Purely because when you have something in that interim stage between 0 and 100, each time you do that thing, you have to make the decision about whether this particular instance is going to be one of the times where you're not doing it, or whether it's going to be one of the times where you are doing it. And when there's any kind of decision that has to be made like this, over time, you're naturally going to become worse and worse at picking between the good option and the bad option, because you're going to fatigue as you make more decisions with time. One example of how I've employed this idea in my own life is my stance on eating red meat. I'd completely abstain from eating any red meat. The reason I do this is because I see that the negatives outweigh the positives. And so I just think that there's no reason for me to kind of compromise my position on this and sometimes eat red meat. As I mentioned before, if I was to sometimes eat red meat, then this line between 0 and 100% becomes blurry, and I might be eating red meat more often than I would like to. Another example of where I've employed this idea in my own life is when it comes to video games. I used to play a lot of video games on the computer, particularly one game called Dota 2 on Steam. And I played a lot of it. I probably played around 2,900 hours. I found that when I played it, I was actually quite addicted to it. Anyways, as you can see, I spent a lot of time on it. And once I started university, I made the decision to not play any video games on Steam or anything else for that matter through the uni semester. I found that by employing this hard and fast rule, I was able to prevent myself from slipping up because I didn't even have the inclination or the feeling that I wanted to play. I just knew that I would never be in a position where I would be playing games during semester because it was just completely off the table. And I think that having such a hard and fast rule is really beneficial in situations where you think that you might become addicted to something, or you find something really enjoyable like video games, like chocolate or junk food, like smoking or drinking alcohol. This just goes to show that the more that you can reduce your decision fatigue, the more likely you are to prevent bad habits and maintain good ones. Another key part of preventing bad habits is changing how you view yourself. Say, for example, you wanted to quit drinking alcohol and you were offered a beer by a mate and you said, "Nah, I'm staying away from the alcohol." It sounds like that your mentality is that your default identity is to drink and that you are forcing yourself not to drink. Instead, if you said, "Nah, I don't drink alcohol," then it sounds like your identity is inherently that you don't drink. If you're able to maintain this subtle shift in mentality for long periods of time, then eventually when you're going to social gatherings, you won't think, "Oh man, I can't drink tonight." Instead, the thought will never even cross your mind. Now, it goes without saying that all people are different and have unique circumstances that will affect the things that work and don't work for them. When it comes to quitting bad habits, I find that the cold turkey method works best for me, But I think that for other people, it might not necessarily be the best option for them. Instead, a gradual reduction might be more suited to their kind of style of personality. The all or nothing principle should only be used in specific situations to help develop self-discipline in different aspects of your life. The other thing to keep in mind is that failure is a natural part of the process. When it comes to talking to patients about smoking cessation, one of the things that we as health professionals are taught about how to talk to patients is to emphasize the potential that this might take several attempts. And the same applies to any kind of good or bad habit that you're trying to promote or prevent. At the end of the day, when it comes to creating behavioral change in yourself, the key is to stay disciplined and stay positive. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.